family in your thoughts and prayers at this time, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. We threw me off.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can I move the agenda table, please? Moved by Vice President Moore, seconded by Ms. Flores. Are there any additions, corrections, deletions to the agenda? I'd like to make an addition. I would like to add 10.01, resolution regards to weapons detection systems. Can I get a second? Seconded by Vice President Malor. All those in favor of the amended agenda? That passes 9-0. Moving on to student leader comments. We have our student leaders from the Phoenix Academy here this evening. Welcome, everyone.
Hi, my name is Jasmine.
Hi, my name's Ba.
Hi, I'm Tamara.
And we're here to tell you about Phoenix and our current art project. Phoenix is a program for expanding learning opportunities in the district for our students in grades 8 through 12. Our school focuses on social and emotional learning, hands-on learning, and alternate approaches to learning and scheduling.
What does this look like at Phoenix Academy? An example of this alternative approach is a Muppet Mayhem project. In one of the Phoenix Academy art classes, Muppet Mayhem, in short, is making puppets for special needs class at Olympia. For the past couple of months, we've been working and learning how to construct a puppet for these students.
This has been an extremely messy project that takes a lot of patience and planning and finding new ways to overcome obstacles. Making Olympia students a part of the process was important to us. We began meeting with the other class via Google Meet. Our first meeting involved just getting to know them and who we were working with and what their needs are.
For the second meeting, we created this hand measurement guide and talked with the other class through the process. As we progressed and were at different stages, we could see what worked and didn't. We were able to experiment. For example, Jasmine decided not to include the body into the design as we realized it would be more suitable for Wyatt to have a foam body removed. The body would get in the way of his wheelchair. We used a lot of trial and error, which ultimately made us think about what is best for the other students.
The best part about this project is being able to work with and help other students. They wouldn't be able to do this on their own. So, what do we like about Phoenix Academy? I officially began going to Phoenix Academy back in October of last year, and I quickly began to realize that this is how education should be. Previously, before coming to the school, I struggled as our public schooling system is structured to provide for one general type of student, when everyone is, in fact, different and has different needs. I feel like this school is flexible and accommodates a variety of different students. I wish I knew about Phoenix earlier.
I like the size of the school. Class sizes are smaller. It is a better environment for me. I used to be in schools with larger crowds, which always made me anxious. Phoenix is a lot easier to make friends or just know and understand each other.
I'm just winging it, so, stay with me. Me personally, I don't really like school, but I do understand the importance of school and education. When I applied back to school, because I was out for a few weeks, they instead of sending me to my home school, they recommended me here, and I was confused because why would they, send me to a different school? It made no sense to me. But my sister-in-law said, never judge a book by its cover, so try it. And here I am I entered the school in late September. The school is very small. The teachers have their own unique traits. Everyone learns different, everyone teaches different, and it is a good, positive experience. From my past school, Olympia was very, very, very crowded, so you couldn't really get anywhere, honestly. Walking around in these halls, and there's 200, 400, maybe 1,000 kids walking around. You're trying to get to a class, you're on the other side of the whole world, and you're trying to get to another class on the other side of the other world. You can't get there. So you would usually be late. The thing with Olympia was the work was a bit excessive. You didn't really, half the stuff we didn't really need to do. We could just learn it on a simple piece of paper. And the thing with Phoenix is, nobody pressures you to do anything. You're obligated to choose to sit out if you want to. And the work is reasonable, as work should be. So thank you for listening to me.
Here are a few more reasons why we enjoy attending Phoenix Academy. Our salad party happens quarterly throughout the year thanks to our community outdoor and hydroponic gardens, which are maintained by Mrs. Gates, our science teacher, and her students. Our salad parties are well liked by everyone. This event introduces new foods and healthy alternatives to what we normally eat. It's pretty cool that we get to grow what we eat for these meals. The horticulture students are excited that the next crop will be ready to harvest at the end of the quarter.
These are a few photos from the Special Makeups Effect workshop at Brockport, and Professor, I don't know how to say that name. What? Argid Me, I wasn't there, so I can't speak from experience. But my script says it was fun and surprising to learn that what people can actually study at college.
Thank you for having us here tonight. We hope you enjoy learning about the activities and resources Phoenix provides.
I'm going to ask you guys to come up and do a picture with the board, if you don't mind. Don't worry, your hair looks way better than mine. Why don't you guys come up too? Come on.
We're all gonna be in
Yeah, you're all going to be in the picture. Good, how are you? Getting ready? Arcadia Middle School. We're gonna do the picture now, so if you guys come up, that'd be great. I'm not just a pretty face. Mr. Long, why don't you guys come up too? Very good. Thank you. I should do. Why don't we just do this one more time? As long as we're doing pictures, I'm gonna make everybody come back around. Zaka, will you come up and do a picture with me? You're gonna hear about the wonderful things from Safa here in a second, and why don't the Olympia staff that's here come on up and join us?
Why did you bring out the whole staff?
Bring everybody out. Absolutely. Were you taking notes there? Good?
Should we go halfway
I
back?
don't know, I want you to all get halfway back and I'm gonna bring it back.
Because that would surprise me.
That happens, Tammy. What do you expect? Next, we have 1.06, Student Recognition Presidential Scholars Program. Superintendent Groutman.
Yes, so Safa, would you please stand? So we are really, really excited to have you here tonight, so thank you so much for being here. I wrote up something a little bit more formal that I'd like to read to everybody about you. Commissioner Betty A. Rosa announced recently that the State Education Department nominated 25 New York State high school seniors for the U.S. Presidential Scholars Program. Presidential Scholar Recognition is one of the nation's highest honors for high school students who represent excellence in education and a promise of greatness in young people. The nominees have modeled academic excellence, dedication to civic life, and leadership abilities. One of the nominees selected as a candidate is Safa Hussein, a 12th grader from Olympia. Safa, I know personally, and I've written a list of things that I know sort of put you in this category of greatness. So take a minute just to listen while I read off just a few of your accomplishments and things that make you great. Number one, she's a great contributor to the superintendent's student leadership team and our equity design team that works to elevate student voice across our district. Number two, she has worked on the Olympia Morning Show, announcing news to the school community each day, keeping everyone informed. Three, she was selected to participate in Ignition, a program where she's mentored younger students that transition through the middle school. Four, she has founded the Yemen Project to raise money and awareness for the Yemen humanitarian crisis. Five, she's volunteered in the Big Brother, Big Sister program. Six, she was a member of the National Honor Society and has a long, long list of other awards and recognition. I say on top of all of that, if you know Safa, you know and see and experience her greatness every time you have a conversation, every time you see her in a hallway, every time you see her in a classroom participating. You add so much to our school district, and I know as a superintendent that I appreciate you so much. You are an inspiration to your fellow students and our school community, and just want to say congratulations for this remarkable honor. 25 in all of New York State is huge. So thank you and congratulations, Safa.
And if you'd like to sneak out, I'm sure with that extensive resume, you probably have other things you need to do. So if this is a good time for you to sneak out, this would be a good time in the meeting. Thank you so much for coming. Congratulations. Can I have somebody move the staffing to the table, please? Moved by Ms. Flores, seconded by Mr. Maloney. Any comments, questions, concerns on staffing? Seeing none, all is in favor. That passes 9-0. Assistant Superintendent Larson.
Thank you so much. I apologize to this next person to have to follow SAFA, because that's a big act to follow. But we have someone that we would like to introduce you to tonight. Please welcome our new senior architect, David Phelps. Dave has been working in the architectural profession, specializing in K-12 education design for over 20 years, and as a licensed architect for the past 10 years. He has worked with many local school districts, including Greece, on small and large projects. Dave is very excited to be part of the team in Greece. He's looking forward to bringing his expertise to Greece and contributing to the enhancement of educational spaces within the district. Dave's favorite part of the job is when students, especially younger students, walk into a new space for the first time. Their energy and excitement bring a sense of achievement. Prior to coming to Greece Central, Dave worked at a local architecture engineering firm in downtown Rochester since 2006. While there, he was a senior architect and project manager in the educational studio. Dave lives in Webster with his wife Melissa and their twin boys, Dominic and Jacob, and their two dogs, Kennedy and Genesee. In his spare time, Dave is a volunteer firefighter with the West Webster Fire District, currently serving as a lieutenant. While not working or at the firehouse, Dave enjoys spending time with his friends and family, golfing, cooking, and traveling. Congratulations, Dave, and welcome to Greece.
I'm going to have you do a picture with Superintendent, Deputy Superintendent, and Assistant Superintendent Colelli. And Mr. Bianchi, since he's going to be filling your big shoes, why don't you join in the picture too? Thank you. Congratulations. Next up, we have 2.02, the GTA MOA Student Teaching Stipend. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Dr. Trawick, seconded by Mr. Butler. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing that all is in favor. That passes 9-0. 2.03, GTA MOA's additional FTEs. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Bonagorio, seconded by Ms. Flores. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing that all is in favor. That passes 9-0. Moving on to GTA MOA flag football. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? That's moved by Vice President Moore, seconded by Ms. Farah. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing that all is in favor. That passes 9-0. And finally, the Kids Care Individual Agreement. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Loney, seconded by Mr. Butler. Any comments, questions, concerns on that? Seeing that all is in favor. That passes 9-0. Moving on to 4.01, restorative work update. Superintendent Groutman.
Yes, I'm going to have Dr. Zeffitz, Dr. Baker, and Mrs. Lane come on up. I know you have an update around some of the work that we're doing focused on restorative systems, and along with that, just as a teaser, some really positive outcomes and things that I was really excited to hear about as you shared some of your work earlier this month. So thanks for being here.
All right. Good evening, everyone. You'll notice that in addition to the usual suspects tonight, we have some student leaders here to join us to give you a little more detail on one of the systems that we have put in place at Arcadia Middle School. So the adults are going to keep it brief so we can get to the student updates for you to all hear about their great system. But just to ground everybody back into what this key focus area is for Cabinet and the district this year, we're focusing on restorative systems, particularly with an emphasis on 3 buildings that have dedicated staff to restorative practices. So from our strategic plan, it's the definition here. And also important to emphasize, too, that restorative practices, the way that we're defining them here, are meant to be used in conjunction with more traditional behavioral consequences that we use in the district. And also, they are intended to have, as you can see from the graphic here, high expectations along with high support and encouragement as well. This is the definition directly from our strategic plan. And just not going to read this to you, but just want to emphasize here that while the focus, the major focus of restorative practices is on building a positive and supportive culture, school culture within the building, it also is a measure of accountability as well, because you're more likely to be accountable and engage in that accountability if the relationships are closest with the people that you're working with, the adults that the students are working with in school. And finally, the goals and objectives of this pilot. We want to focus just on some of these potential implications here, and an emphasis that the intent here is to reduce behaviors, not eliminate any behaviors. And it has the potential to accelerate all of the potential implications that are listed here, all of which are favorable for our students. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dr. Baker, and then we will get into it.
All right, so we'll break down. Our focus this evening will be mainly on that middle tier of Tier 2, but just as a reminder from the last time that we were here, we spoke about that restorative practices is hard to understand at times because there are multiple interventions within each tier that make up restorative practices. So it's not just one thing or a couple things. There's multiple interventions that occur at the prevention level, but then also with an intervention lens. So some of the outcomes that we've seen so far this year for just Q1, it's not just, directly related to restorative practices, but we do believe that it's having an impact along with some other efforts that we're doing throughout the district. But we've seen a trend in a positive direction where we are reducing chronic absenteeism as compared to before COVID specifically from that 19-20 school year, and hopefully that trend continues to move down. We also see a reduction in office disciplinary managed referrals. If you pay attention to just the blue bars alone, we have seen that reduction, again, trending downward towards pre-COVID levels. You'll see that the red bar is measuring a new system that we're putting into Infinite Campus. Previous to that, we still did track those level 1 behaviors. They were just in a different system. They were in our Swiss system. So now we're just starting to track them because they are an Infinite Campus. So it is just something that we'll track over time. But if you're comparing apples to apples, that blue bar does show the downward trend. So level 1 referrals are teacher managed. They're not getting a response from an administrator. If you look at short-term suspensions, those are also trending downward. The blue bar represents the total number of short-term suspensions for just the first quarter, and then the red bar is the number of students who received those short-terms. So the difference in those numbers, there are some students who have received multiple short-term suspensions, and so we accounted for both of those, and both are trending downward. The biggest reduction that we've seen so far this school year in Q1 was between our long-term suspended suspensions. So those, the number of students and the number of long-term suspensions are typically the same. And so you'll see that that has been reduced greatly through, and we do contribute this a lot to some of the restorative systems that we've put into place. I'll turn it over to Shannon.
All right, so as we talked about the last time we were here, we're really trying to increase our Tier 1 systems so that all staff members have some knowledge of restorative mindset. This would include understanding the proactive part of restorative, so building relationships. That comes in the form of community building circles. People tell their stories. That builds understanding. You can get down to the base level of where certain behaviors are coming from. We talk a lot about restorative language and what that means, using restorative questions to understand how students are feeling, how their behaviors impact other people, and what they can do to make things right. So that accountability piece is there. And then also restorative conversations. So when something goes wrong, how do we understand how I impacted other people? And so this was where we were at just a little while ago. We had 14, 6, and 17% of staff trained in Tier 1 restorative practices, but we have 2 more rounds coming up, one in February and one in March, that we're filling up quickly. So we should see those numbers increase. And then, again, we're trying to build our restorative systems. So one of those systems that we've begun at Arcadia Middle, and I'm going to let these young scholars talk about, is peer mediation. So I'm going to give it to you guys, and you can talk about peer mediation at Arcadia Middle.
I'm Amy Melton, teacher on special assignment for restorative practice, and I just want to introduce you to my fabulous peer mediators.
Hello, my name is Zion Benson, and I'm in 7th grade, and I'm one of the peer mediators of Greece Arcadia Middle School.
Hi, my name is Joey Katerina, and I'm also a peer mediator at Arcadia Middle School.
Hi, my name is Eloise, and I am also a peer mediator at Arcadia Middle School. But see, as far as peer mediation goes, in October, 15 students from 7th and 8th grade were trained in peer mediation. Since then, we have, not us, but like the whole group as a whole, we have carried out 36 mediations involving 72 students. We have resolved issues such as friendship issues, drama from social media, arguments, and play fighting. And just last week, 11 students from 6th grade have become mediators in our steed.
How it felt to be chosen as a leader. Being chosen as a leader boosted my confidence. It helped me better understand others. I felt proud of myself to be chosen as a leader, to be able to help out others and solve their conflicts, so our school can be a better place, a safe place, and a happy place.
A lot of different things we like about the peer mediation process is all of us peer mediators like dealing with other people's problems. Like, say if we had to deal with that problem before in our life, like we know how to solve the problem, and we could hear about situations we've been in ourselves. We could solve friendship problems to make our school a safer place. We could stop things before they escalate, and that feels really good for us peer mediators to help. Like if somebody was to self-harm themselves, we could stop them from doing that, or if it was a fight about to break out, we could stop it from there. And we like the position because we could work with staff and higher level people and younger students. It feels good to be a leader at a young age.
How does a peer mediation work? Oh. It's okay. Peer mediation is a set-up meeting that is run by 2 peer mediators with an adult in the room. The peer mediation process starts with myself and another peer mediator sitting across from one another with the students in a conflict across from one another. The mediators will go over the ground rules of the mediation, explaining that everything said in this meeting is confidential. We hear from both sides and listen to them and label their feelings. We help brainstorm possible solutions, and once they both come to an agreement, we can sign an agreement form.
See, now this bears the question, how has peer mediation helped us to be better leaders and how it has helped our school community as a whole? Peer mediation has improved the school because adults cannot understand children as well as other children can. If I had to share my feelings with another adult, I'm not always comfortable because I feel as if they do not understand me as well as my peer might. Having this leadership position puts me in a place of keeping regard for my position, and before I'm about to make a bad decision, I'm thinking I'm a leader, I'm a role model for others, should I really be doing this? And that helps me to honor my position. We help other kids to label their feelings that they otherwise might not have been able to do on their own. It helps to build bonds and trust between students, and I am actually still friends with one of the girls that I mediated.
Nice job, you guys. That was really good. As you can see, they're doing great work. Their voices are being heard by their peers. Their leadership is respected by other students, and they're growing as leaders. You know, our peer mediators come from all different walks of life, and, I mean, what do you guys think? Has it helped you to become leaders? Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys for doing this. All right, so earlier this year, we talked about some of the things that we would be doing, and you can see the check marks. We've accomplished a few things. I'm not going to read them to you, but in process, we are carrying out priority goals that were determined by each building based on a needs assessment. We're in the midst of clarifying roles and responsibilities so that we can get things done in a more efficient manner. We're developing team work plans that will be carried out through the rest of the year and beyond. And our next step is to integrate restorative practices into our SIP and identify ways to increase Tier 1 practices. So thank you very much.
Turn it over for any questions.
Questions? Mrs. Farmer?
Sure. Christine, what does teacher-managed behavior with a kid look and sound like?
Yep. So we outlined some specific examples right within the code of conduct. There's a page that says level 1 behaviors and defines some of the strategies that could happen. So that could just be verbal redirection. It could be a seat change, but it could be something that could involve restorative practice where a teacher might circle up and talk about the impact of something on the school community right within their classroom. So there's lots of strategies that could be implemented. It could be a specific behavioral strategy that they implement for one student that they're trying, or other ideas that could involve, that's maybe even a specific management plan for a student, perhaps, that they're trying to see if that makes an impact before getting an administrator involved.
You done, or you got something else?
I have a follow-up.
Sure.
So you touched on a plan, a behavior plan, and before getting an admin engaged. How is that plan? Is the teacher just doing it on their own? They meet with the student? And at what point, if this behavior continues, is it okay for a teacher to contact an admin?
So we were talking about typically like a 3-by-3 in the sense of usually it's, attempting to have 3 parent contacts and 3 different types of, interventions that might be taking place so that it isn't just, sort of one and done. Now, depending on what that means, it may not always reach that. Some behaviors automatically go to an administrator, and that's outlined in our code of conduct. So it really is, there's 7 level 1 behaviors that fall in the level 1 category. So if there's a fight, for example, that's going to automatically skip the level 1 process. Sure. So it's just for specific behaviors that would fall into that.
Thank you.
Mr. Butler?
Well, first, we've failed in saying thank you to the students for coming in again tonight and reminding us why we're here and what we're doing, because you all are so impressive, and I so appreciate you screwing up the courage to stand up in front of this group and tell your story. So thank you very much for that. And I always say I'm less worried about the future every time I get out of one of these meetings when people like you come up and speak. So well done. I'm curious about if you all have a target for the percentage of staff that you want to have trained in restorative practices, because the impressive reduction in long-term suspensions was achieved with pretty low percentage of staff trained in restorative practices. So I'm curious what's next for that, and when Athena's going to get some love there too.
Yeah. So really the focus on these 3 schools was because they have the extra teacher on special assignment with all or part of their role focused on restorative practices, hopefully the other campuses will eventually get some love too, but we had the extra structures built into those 3 to be able to try something new with some success, hopefully. And hopefully we get to 100% of staff trained is a longer term goal. And why we put that in as a metric is you can see that we do have a very low percentage. And so that's why our focus is to work to increase that. And that's part of the reason we recognize why there's such a misconception on what restorative practices is or is not. It's because there is very minimal staff trained so far within the system. So if you looked beyond those 3 campuses, you'd see similar trends of the low numbers of staff that have been trained.
Can I just add one footnote to that? So a lot of the research points to the importance of having the leadership trained in restorative practices. So we have prioritized getting the principals into the trainings as soon as possible too. So they'll, the 2 that haven't been will be in the next cohort as well. So that will be a little more kind of backing for it at the buildings.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Traywick?
So my comment is to the kids, I'm so proud of you guys. I was sitting here like, oh my goodness, 30 years ago, it's a long time ago, I was a peer mediator. I was part of my school's first pilot program. And once I became a leader, I have always been a leader. I never leave you. Every skill, the ability to mediate situations, even when you don't think you're mediating, you are. And you become a very valuable asset in whatever environment you are because you have those skills. And then people look up to you because they know that you guys are kind of like the peacemakers, you know? So please, first, I just want to say congratulations. Thank you for taking this on. And you are gaining a skill that's going to take you very far in life. So, you know, encourage your friends to get, you know, to be a part of the program as well. But I'm really excited. I feel like, you know, you guys are like the next gen, you know. And as Mr. Butler said, you know, you guys are going to carry us through. These are you're the lights for us. So thank you.
Mr. Bongorio?
So I would also like to just echo the thought of, you know, what a great job you young people are doing. That's really important. That's, no matter how we approach these issues, that's always going to be a valuable piece to bring to the table. So thank you for that. I do have a couple of questions. Dr. Zaffitz, you talked about some of the research. I would love it if you could pass along some of the research that supports these systems and how they should best be implemented. I'm having a lot of fun reading up on research these days, so that would be great if you could do that.
You got it.
Thank you. I also, Sean, can I keep going?
Sure.
Thank you. I also have just a curiosity. How much of this is kind of normalization after the COVID years? We came back, there was a lot of just challenge in coming back to the school environment. Are we, to some degree, just recovering from that?
I would say, yeah, to put it simply, but I would also point out that I think in addition to kind of normalizing, we've also put a lot of supports in place. So we've added staff, we've added systems, we've had another year to build relationships with students and staff, and we've worked really hard to kind of clarify the different supports that we have for students in the building, make sure that they know about them, make sure that the families know about them. So I think it's a combination. I do think there's some normalization going on, if you will, kind of coming back to a baseline of where we were before, but I do also think that it has a lot to do with the support and the hard work and systems that we've put in place. And also just the trust that we've been able to build too with students and families that the systems and supports that we have are going to help them because without that engagement in them, you know, we'd be out of luck. And I think we saw a little bit of that the last couple of years when we first came back, and now I think that trust is being built up more. I don't know if you have anything to add.
Anybody else have anything else? Mr. Bongorio, go ahead.
So just to follow up on one of the prior questions about when do issues get brought to administrators, how early do parents get brought into situations? Because I've heard of some situations where it kind of takes parents by surprise, that something an issue might be out there and it's not brought immediately to them.
Part of our code of conduct says that parents would be notified every time. So whether it's teacher managed or administrator managed, the parents should be notified.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I just add one thing to that too? I think if you're hearing that they're not being notified, if you can encourage them to reach out to their school leadership, that could help bridge that communication gap.
Thanks. Anything else? I just got two quick follow-ups. One, and I guess it's for clarification, once you guys become peer mediators, you're trained moving forward, correct? So like they move in the 8th grade, they're a peer mediator next year at Arcadia Middle, and then when they move, I'm assuming most of them will go to Arcadia High School, they'll be peer mediators there as well?
That's the goal. So we're building the system at the high school right now. So the goal is that when my 8th graders move, that they'll be able to continue that work. But Joey was a 7th grade peer mediator last year.
Gotcha, perfect. And it's kind of a follow-up to what Mr. Bonagorio and what Ms. Farmer said. On the teacher, I don't know what you want to call it, teacher handled discipline or whatever, can they issue a consequence, like a lunch detention or an after-school detention? Is that part of what they're able to do?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's part of what we clarified as part of our Code of Conduct Committee last year, is that it's existed that way in our Code of Conduct for several years, but people were unclear or unaware of that was the intention behind it. So this isn't new necessarily, but it's been a reboot to help refresh because our practices weren't necessarily consistent with that.
And then my last question, you guys might not really have an answer to this, but, I mean, I appreciate the chronic absenteeism. I mean, that's one of my pet peeves is absenteeism and how it impacts our kids. So that's my question, and I don't know, maybe you can provide this at a later time or in another update. Those, I think it's 25%. I think we have a 25%, don't quote me, but if that was a number, how many of those kids, I mean, obviously, if you're chronically absent, you've missed a significant amount of school in the first 2 quarters, give or take almost. How many of those students are falling to a detriment behind, I guess, is my concern. If you're chronically absent, obviously you're not getting the instruction, you're not doing the work, I would assume in most cases, if we're considering you chronically absent. So I guess, how do we rectify that component? I mean, if we're gonna, I mean, hopefully our number gets better than 25%, but if we stay at that 25%, how do we manage that and get these kids where they need to be? Because, I mean, I do think, and this is strictly my opinion, I do think a lot of the struggles we have with our ELA scores and some of our other scores, region scores, et cetera, are probably tied. If you look at absenteeism, I would find it very hard to believe that a student is scoring very well on an ELA exam and they've been in school every day, as opposed to I've missed 25% of my instruction time. So how do we make that, or do we have numbers and looking at those students, I guess, to make it simple?
So we don't have that available right this minute, but we could pull that information of any student who's missed chronically absenteeism. So it's important to keep in mind that it's 10% or more at school. So the number of days changes based on where we are. It changes every day based on where that number is. So in the first quarter, I think that's only 5 days of school maybe. So it adds up quickly for you to catch that chronic absenteeism label, but as the year goes on, so there could be a student who's missed 5 days that doesn't have an impact academically versus a student who's missed more than that time, that maybe has missed 20 days in that same period of time, which would have an impact. So, so we certainly could get that and look at that, and we tie it to this because it's around not just the academic impact, we also know it has a social impact too, and impact on relationships of knowing the adults, which is why we do believe it's connected to what we're working to build through our restorative practices lens.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, if you miss 10% of school days, you miss 18 days. I mean, that's a month of school.
Yeah,
I mean, you've missed a month and 10 months of school. So it does make a difference. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming. If you guys want to sneak out, you don't want to listen to Mr. Kalili's budget presentation, because I definitely don't. So.
Thanks, Amy.
All right. 4.02, budget development process update. Superintendent Groutman.
Yes, I'm going to introduce Mr. Clilley because I really want to hear about your budget update for us. Thank you.
Short and just say we're good right now. And call it a night. So, well, thank you. So for this evening, we're going to do a quick update on these 4 items here, touch on the budget process update, the governor's state of the state, some advocacy points that are out there that may help some of our board members utilize as they're out and about and maybe making a trip to Albany as needed, and look at our budget timeline. There's a lot of information in here that has come out recently in the last week, so we'll touch on it briefly as we go through. So as we always mention in our budget presentations, everything's tied to the strategic plan and vision, Reach 2027. Anytime there's decisions that need to be made, and that will be forthcoming probably during February and March, we'll go back to our 3 commitments here for igniting learning, cultivating trust, and expanding opportunity to hang our hat on what decisions are going to be made as we need to make adjustments to the budget. In terms of the budget process itself, we've reviewed the strategic plan goals at Cabinet in preparation for the budget. Finance has received all budget revisions from schools and departments based on their initial meetings. This year, staff was able to, our team was able to sit with each of the departments, review their budgets, help them adjust as necessary, and document their needs, which will reflect as much as we can in the budget. School and department meetings are still ongoing, finishing those up, and staffing meetings are scheduled now through March. The initial rollover budget is in process. That budget is rollover is normally based on the governor's state aid runs, which my understanding is they've come out, so we need to take a look at those and see where we fit. One of the important points we want to make here is that we have turned the corner, and now the revenues from the state are at 53% of our budget, as opposed to maybe 38% that they were 10 years ago. So it's significantly more reliable on the state. So we're anxious to see what that rollover does. The other point to make is the rollover budget will include all bargaining unit obligations and all our current ARP positions funded for an additional year. So we're going to kind of paint that picture, see where we are, and then back up from that and make adjustments as we need from that point of view. The governor's executive budget will be presented to the board on February 6th, and the legislative budget will be expected in March, and we'll come back with that when we receive it as well. Tax cap calculations, preliminarily, we've done it. We'll come back to the board on February 27th to present that and where that sits. Our tax-based growth factor, as we may have shared earlier, is 1.0043. It was 1.0022 last year. 4.3 compared to the 2.2 means there's still a little bit growth. If you had a 1.0, 1.0000, your district has not grown at all. The lowest this year was 1.0 in Brighton to a high of 1.0218 in Churchville-Chili. I'm not sure what's going on in Churchville, but they're building something. The allowable growth factor will be capped for the tax cap at 2%. CPI for this year has been determined to be 4.12%. We will be capped at 2% within the tax cap calculation. December CPI data did come out. It's at 4.12%, and our debt service budget we'll be reviewing with our external consultants on February 9th, and we'll bring back that to the board too in a future presentation. So, Governor, back on January 9th, did present her state of the state. I just wanted to hit on a couple highlights on that. The governor's executive budget and address, actually we had here mid to late January, is actually this morning. One of the highlights, I guess, or the overall summary of that was that the state budget has increased from last year to this year, 4.5%, or it's up about $6 billion. And for education, school aid, governor's proposal is about $825 million in foundation aid increase. Other proponents and advocacy groups are looking for about 925 to 950 million. So it's a little bit under where I think folks were expecting, but nonetheless, it's an increase in foundation aid. School district state aid runs will follow. Again, I think those are out. We'll look at that tomorrow. The November database run was generally used for the governor's executive budget. For us, and Ginny and I have been working on this, I believe the November database showed an increase of about $4.3 million in our foundation aid. We'll see what that looks like in the actual runs. And then in February, the state will run another database run, which will be used by the legislature to create their budget for March. As we kind of round out the foundation aid increases in the full implementation, I did want to kind of backstep one piece before we got to the next slide and just share a quick summary. We've seen this before, but I did want to highlight a couple points here. One is you're looking from left to right on the above the top graph. From 2007 to about 2011, the blue bar represents what we got in aid. The orange bars represent what the formula said we should have received. And the gray bar is what the full foundation aid should have been had it been fully implemented at that time. So what you're seeing is from 2007 to 2011, we got a little bit more money than the formula actually drove. And that was that attempt to get foundation aid fully implemented. Then the recession hit. And that kind of went from 2010, 11, if you're looking at 11, 12, all the way through 2021, we received about what the formula projected for us, but nowhere near what the full foundation increase should have been. Below that, you'll see a summary, which at the time that the 2021 school year ended, and we were going into a 3-year implementation of the full formula, the state owed us, specifically us, $333 million in foundation aid. From the time that the foundation aid formula was court approved to 2021, they owed us about $333 million. From 22 school year, 22, 23, 23, 24, we did see a sizable increase in our foundation aid funds. We went from about $63 million 3 years ago. We're now at about $106 million. So our foundation aid increase has been about $43 million. But when you compare that to the $333 million that owed, we're at about 7 or 8 years of break even before we get the $333 million that was owed to us over the last 15 or 16 years. However, these two slides were in another document I was reading, and I thought I'd share because it was interesting. With the 23-24 being the last year of the implementation, this 3-year foundation aid summary by need is on the left and by enrollment is on the right. And what it's showing is that statewide, after 16 years of not fully implementing the foundation aid formula, state aid increased statewide by about 76%. And that's the far bar on the right, by need. However, you'll see subcategories there as well, and what you'll notice is that the high-need urban, suburban districts were the largest increases, which makes sense. The high-need rural districts had the smallest percentage increase at 59%. So everybody got something, some got more than others, which kind of goes to the enrollment chart on the right. The high-need rural districts had the largest enrollment losses, and therefore a smaller percentage increase in their foundation aid. High-need urban and suburban had the lowest enrollment decreases, and therefore got more money out of the foundation aid formula being driven the way it should have been driven. And I wanted to show that to say the monies, although an increase, it's not even close to what was owed to us, but statewide, there has been an attempt to redirect the funds from where they currently were to some of the higher needed areas and some of the shifts based on enrollment. So with that, we should see our foundation aid stay at about $106 million in the foreseeable future here. Talk a couple seconds about the governor's state of the state address. The overarching themes on January 9th that we needed more housing, we needed more healthcare services and mental health services, and there's a big push for artificial intelligence research and development here in New York State, were three of the big items. More specifically, mental health, expanding mental health clinics below on number 1 for any school that wants one. There should be funding available for any reimbursements for any school that wants one. The difference in this was that my understanding is that some of the insurance agencies, insurance companies, would not pay schools the same rates that they would pay to private sectors. She's looking to correct that and make those rates equitable and or equal so that schools are receiving the same funds that a private sector would receive. 2, back to basics reading. You can see developing a best practice plan for teaching literacy, including phonics. All districts are going to have to certify against that plan by September of '25, and she's also looking for $10 million to train 20,000 teachers and teaching assistants. And third, protection for certain work environments. Just thought this was interesting to issue guidance on worker safety in those areas of extreme heat, poor air quality, or extreme precipitation areas. Looking at some advocacy points, Board of Regents is always out there with their priorities. Their proposal is a $1.6 billion increase in state aid for next year to include $927 million in foundation aid increase and $702 million in other aids, and to provide $1 million for some continued educational research on the formula itself. Board of Regents also looking to support CTE by increasing a portion of the salaries that are reimbursable to BOCES so that they can enable districts to make more CTE available to more districts. Third, teacher recruitment pipeline. They've acknowledged, obviously, that this is an issue, but looking to provide funding on a statewide approach to address teacher recruitment and retention issues. All districts are struggling with this. It needs to be dealt with at the state level, and there's a request for $3.7 million over 3 years to do this, with $1.2 million for next year. And lastly, for the Board of Regents was $70 million to go towards free and appropriate education to students with disabilities until age 22. Currently, we receive state aid for students with disabilities up through the age of 21. We now need to educate them through the age of 22. However, there currently isn't any additional funding for that additional year should we need it for a student. So this money will be applied towards that endeavor. ASBO, Association of School Business Officials, also has their advocacy points. they're looking, again, to fund a comprehensive study on foundation aid and its factors, fully fund all the expense-based aids, expand support for CTE similar to the Board of Regents, provide state aid for planning and studies to zero-emission buses to better align with amortization and lease terms. As we're all aware, when this new mandate goes through, electric buses will be amortized over 12 years. Nobody's certain that they'll last that long. Buses normally last between 8 and 10, so some advocacy around adjusting the 12-year amortization down to 7 or 8 years, or maybe 10 years, to better align with the usefulness of the bus. ASBO's also looking to increase capital outlay projects from $100,000 to $250,000. That $100,000 has been around for the past 20 years. The last 3 years, inflation has really taken a bite out of how far 100,000 can go, so they're looking to increase that to 250. And again, same Board of Regents, advocacy on item number 6. Universal pre-K, there has been an expansion in support. UPK funding structure, though, is still very complicated and tough to access. So there is advocacy to merge all the funding sources into a single needs-based formula with a fixed amount per pupil. Make new and expanded UPK allocations available upon request, and make transportation and capital work related to universal pre-K aidable. Number 8 is a new item that I never knew existed, but it's to restore growth aid. So I guess in years past, if you had an increase in enrollment within your district, you were able to apply for growth aid, and you would receive aid for that increased enrollment within the current year, rather than having to wait with one additional year to get it. I think this has come about with some of the asylum migrations that have happened throughout the state. We're seeing more kids come into the system, but we have to take care of them, but we don't see any aid until the year following. They would like to have a growth aid formula to meet current needs. And lastly, ASBO would like to see all the prior year adjustments, we've talked about that in the past, to be paid. And then lastly, BOCES, very similar to the previous two. Students with disabilities to age 22, reestablish the growth aid formula, study the foundation aid formula, fully expense aids, expense-based aids. 2, address critical workforce shortages. They would like to see streamline the requirements for school bus drivers, modernize the civil service system itself, and then extend the retirees to work without penalty for up to 5 years. Currently, if you're a retiree through June of '24, you can earn more than the $35,000 or $36,000. They'd like to increase that and make it a permanent item or a semi-permanent item for 5 years, so that we can retain some of our retirees within the district. Extend the authorization to piggyback on contracts. We're allowed, if someone else has done a contract or a bid, and there is a contract out there, rather than us having to repeat what they've done, we can piggyback off of contracts that are out there. That is set to expire in June of '26. They'd like to extend that until June of 2036, which would help a lot of districts save some soft costs. And then support for transition to zero emission buses, make electrification studies aidable. They need to address the issue with a failed bond vote. There still is no response to what do I do if my residents don't approve a zero bus emissions purchase or capital project, infrastructure project. What do I do in that case? Ensure that the costs for needed grid and other non-district infrastructure needs are addressed. The worry there is that folks would start to increase prices because they know you don't have a choice. So try to put some controls in to keep the expenses lower than they would have been. Additionally, BOCES is looking to increase the reimbursements for CTE, and BOCES would like to see their lease terms increased to 20 years. Where they fall short is all districts, including ours, need more BOCES services. However, they don't have the space. Part of their problem with renting space is they are tied to 10 years versus 20, and it's difficult for them to go get a space when they're tied to 10 years. So they're looking to lease space for 20 years, which would make it a little easier for them to obtain more space to provide more services for their districts. And then quickly on the timeline, we've got this evening's update. In February, we will do the rollover in the stated analysis on February 6th. On February 27th, we'll review debt service, the property tax cap, and the bus replacement proposal. In March, we'll do another update to the board on the 5th. On the 19th, we'll have our preliminary public budget input session and the bus replacement resolution to the board for approval. In April, the superintendent's recommended budget will be on April 9th. Legal notices will go out throughout the month and throughout the period. We're looking for board adoption of the proposed budget and the property tax report card the week after on April 16th. April 25th, all the absentee ballots will be mailed out. The budget book will be available to the public by April 26th. In May, the official public hearing will be on May 7th. The budget notices will be mailed to residents the following day on May 8th, and the budget vote in the Board of Elections will take place on May 21st.
Vice President Millar.
Romeo, did the age for the students with disabilities already change to 22, or is that for the new school year?
Not sure. I think it's for, at least for next school year. I don't know, is anybody, it's a proposal for next year. I don't think it's for this school year, but I think it's for next year.
Okay.
I don't know that for certain.
Mr. Butler.
Thanks, Romeo, for the presentation. I enjoyed it. I wonder, as I look at those advocacy priorities, this is advocacy season in Albany, right? Now that once the budget comes out, that's when people start pushing for the things they're interested in. And by my count, there's 19 priorities identified across those three groups, and I'm sure there are many others who have another set of priorities as well. I wonder if there's anyone that has made a statement about what actually has a chance of happening. A lot of times advocacy priorities are a combination of things we want and things we can actually have reason to believe might be able to happen. And if you have any thoughts on a role for the board in promoting some of these advocacy priorities, because they can be game changers.
Several of these have been out there for a couple years now. I guess it probably depends on viewpoint, right? The foundation aid increase in following the formula and continuing to provide increases to foundation aid is paramount for, I guess, across the board for all districts. The CTE increase, that's been out there. I do believe that would have an impact along with the lease terms for BOCES to help out districts so they can get some more space to kind of provide more specialized programming that maybe some districts can do. Overall, I have not heard any must-haves, but as I'm looking through this, the teacher shortage, the bus driver issues need to be addressed. The civil service piece needs to be addressed. And as I'm looking towards our younger students, the UPK funding structure has always been an issue. There's a big priority on having kids come to UPK earlier. We're seeing enrollments requests increase, but accessing the funds has really been an issue. I'd say that is probably Longer term, that's probably a priority for us, is to make that a little more accessible to get to.
I know there's a legislative breakfast
about it.
coming up that the School Boards Association is hosting, and.
The what?
There's a legislative breakfast
Yes,
coming up
that's
that
in
the School Boards
February.
Association is hosting, and if we think that there's a role for us to advocate for probably a small handful of things, and we think that would be a good place to do that, then I think that'd be a great thing for us to consider as a board.
Agreed. If there's something you would like for board members attending the legislative breakfast, something you would like documentation-wise to have in your hand, I'd be glad to put that together, provide some details for you to be able to discuss at the tables. I can go ahead and do that. I just would need to know which
I guess,
topics.
yeah, thank you for that. I guess I feel like we have to pare down our list, and so that we can, everything I've always heard from legislators is, don't come to me with 19 things. We need to narrow it down to maybe 3 things.
Yeah. And again, this is 3 different organizations.
Yeah,
with
sure.
a
No,
different
I'm just using that
perspective.
as an example. And some of those are overlaps, so it's not actually 19, it's maybe 14 or something. But the point, I feel like, remains.
Well, and I would just add that Monroe County School Boards also has a list,
Right.
which is not exactly the same. So to your point around how do we narrow down and really be clear about the things that are really important to us, biggest bang for our buck kind of things.
And as a follow-up to that, Superintendent Groutman and I are meeting with Senator Cooney in the beginning of February to discuss zero-emission buses and some of the concerns with those, so. From an advocacy standpoint, that'll be one of the things we're doing. Mr. Bonagorio?
Actually, I wanted to ask about the status of that. I think some months ago, there was a discussion about the board presenting a letter in a unified way. Is that still on the table?
Yes, that's gonna probably come after our meeting. Thank you. Ms. Flores?
I also want to tell you I enjoyed your presentation. I would like to comment, though, overall, if it isn't for your work and Janine and everybody in your department and the sound fiscal management that you guys continue to do, the estimations, the forecasting, et cetera, every single presentation we have and everything that is done is because this school continues to maintain sound fiscal management. We have TOSAs, we have expanded programs in that because you guys do an outstanding job of sound fiscal management and giving us the most bang for our buck. So I just want to say thank you. I do appreciate that very much.
You're welcome.
I do have a question. So in the beginning of your presentation, you did mention that the share of our budget is at 52-53% that is given. So I think about that, and I think about the possibility of administration change. Do you see our reliance on those government funds continuing to increase? And with your estimations and forecastings that you have done over the next few years, where is our district going with that? Because as I look to that, and if we do, we always face a possibility of an administration change. And the higher that percentage goes up, the more painful it would be if that administration change involved a change in how we are funded.
So we do a current year, a next year, and probably a 3-year projection, at least a couple times a year. It's only as good as the day you complete it, which has been the hard part with state aid. So one of the advocacy points around state aid and the foundation aid was to make it predictable for districts, which it's still not. Case in point, I believe, and we're going to check on this tomorrow, I believe the November database said that we were going to receive $4.3 million in foundation aid, and that's what I had in the presentation. It may be the case that we're only getting we're getting 2.7 instead of 4. It's $1.3 million just on the one item. So it's difficult to predict where that number's going to be. You almost have to deal with it the day it comes in. We do everything conservatively. So even conservatively, we know that 3 to 4, in all likelihood, with what the state is predicting, And even if only half of what they say is true, there's going to be a gap 2 to 3, 3 to 4 years from now. We will be in the same boat that we will have an issue too, budget-wise, if we don't start to plan for adjustments over a 3-year period. So if the numbers that we're using are coming better from the state, and they really hold true to what they're telling us, we'll be fine for a 5 or 6 year period. If the rug gets pulled out from under us and, you know, they all of a sudden come out with a major funding issue and there's a $20 billion hole to deal with, we're not gonna be able to cover that. We've got reserves, you know, that we can plan with. We don't like going there, but we know we have to use them as well. So overall, I think we're in decent shape, although we're more reliant on the state aid for it. It does make it a little bit more challenging because we're reliant there. But I'd rather, I guess, have it that way than have to go to our residents and significantly increase a tax levy. So we'll make adjustments on the expenditure side and use reserves as best we could until kind of things straighten out if there was a hole at the state level. But it does make it tougher. But I guess, you know, I'm thinking about it too. I don't know if it's any different than if you were on the other way, if you were 80% levy and you had to go back out and increase a levy by a significant amount. Is that any better than having to wait for the state to give you funds as well? I'm not sure. But I did want to also say, a lot of times this information that we put out there, we're constantly reading as much as we could just to get a better feel for what is going on as we go into this. I don't mean to put it out there as a flood of information, but just to give people who are not familiar with this an idea of what the issues are, what people are looking for, and what we're trying to project with. So as we do presentations going forward, you've at least got the background from what we're kind of seeing, so that you have some content and some understanding of what we're going to present over February and March.
Mr. Bonagario?
I think we've all heard from residents who are concerned about the increase in for many of them, tax payments. I know we approved a budget last year that actually allowed for a slight reduction in the tax rate, and yet with the way the assessment process works, a lot of people ended up with higher tax burdens, and it's a difficult environment with inflation and all of that. Are we looking at any strategies to contain expenses? And I'll specify where it doesn't affect the people who are delivering the instruction especially, but any ways to protect our tax base and our taxpayers from the challenges ahead of us?
On the assessment side, we have no control over that. I mean, what the town does in terms of assessments, we can keep up on it, we can project from it, but it's it's sort of out of our control. We do our darnest to keep that tax rate under 2, flat if we can. And again, we were surprised, as well as everybody else, we had a reduction in the tax rate last year, and yet taxes went up for many people, and not just for an assessment reason, but you know, that also, the assessment change, the equalization change also impacted the basic star and the enhanced star, which we never had to deal with here in Greece. Expenditure-wise, for next year, our goal is to continue to maintain the supplemental extra positions that we funded out of ARP for at least another year. So we're going to do our darnest to keep that there and to keep the rate 0 or under 2%. We'll do our best to do that. However, at the same time, we know that that's not going to be sustainable going forward, so we're putting together a 3-year plan of what do we do in 24 526 and 2627 in order to kind of right-size the ship in terms of both maybe staffing and non-staffing pieces. On the side, we do have reserves. The reserve should be used to help get to an end goal, not be the end goal, which is sort of where we're struggling, because I don't really know where the state's going to be in order to pull the trigger on how much of a reserve should you use, and then you use it to help with some things, and then the state changes their environment drastically, and you've already spent your savings account. So kind of balancing all that is going to be difficult. Protecting the taxpayers from, we'll do our best. The thing we have, the item we have control over is the levy and the tax rate. The assessments are a huge piece of the tax rate. We don't have control over that. So to the best we can, we will, but it's not always our control. I don't know if that helps you or not.
It's a start.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you. All right.
Just to clarify, the special ed requirement is in place this year for 22-year-olds. So if you think about, we have about 1,600 students who receive special education services. I don't know how many fit into that category exactly, but I can get that information.
Moving on to item 4.03, security updates. Superintendent Groutman.
Yes, I'm going to have Mr. Henderson come on up. Just to provide a little context, we have every year provided updates to our security supports and services. So we are continuously looking at policy, practices, procedures, our infrastructure, the resources that we have in our buildings. And if you don't remember, Steve Chatterton has not been gone long. He always described the fact that security is a system, and it's really something that we're continuously looking at and building on and growing, adapting and making better. So John Henderson has done an incredible job of stepping into his place. We appreciate all of your work, and is going to give us an update around some of the work that's being done collectively, but also in particular around the pilot that we just did this fall with the weapons detection system. So thanks, John, for being here and for preparing this presentation for tonight.
Thank you. So the first slide here is one of the changes we made this year. We have a new table of organization. We've added an additional assistant. So we have two assistants. One covers the A schools of Athena and Arcadia, and the other covers the O schools of Olympia and Odyssey and Phoenix along with that. And we did that, we designed that so that the role under Steve was a growing role, and he took a lot of that stuff on himself. And we knew as we were looking at it, like one person couldn't continue doing what he was doing. So we redesigned this in hopes of getting longevity out of the next person that's going to be filling that role. So one of the other things that was started last year is we started the TAP app security. And just a refresher recollection for that, it's a mobile app, allows the administrators and security the ability to be instantly notified of an emergency. And it's not just an emergency, but any of the shell things. So shelter in place, hold in place, evacuation, lockout, and lockdown. This year, when we rolled it out district-wide, we included the teachers on that, and the teachers have the ability to put the building into a lockdown also. So it's basically more eyes and ears, more to that whole system of security. So currently, we have 1,315 users that are on the system, so. Moving along, the next part of this is the weapons detection pilot program. So we started it over at Arcadia. We started in about mid-October, and we came up with some key areas that we wanted to focus on to see what feedback we could get. Those are up there, student and staff perceptions, impact on arrival times, which was important. We didn't want to interrupt the day. Staffing, functionality, and we didn't want the feeling that it was, jail-like or prison-like. So we wanted the school feeling to be along with it. Well, we quickly, when we dove into it, we immediately, the first day, it took us about 45 minutes to an hour to get the high school in. All sorts of red flags went up. The panic buttons got pushed, and it's like we took a step back. We discussed some of the problems that we had, why we had them. We discussed it. We determined that communication was a big factor that we needed to address. So internally, we needed communication and communication with families. So after the first week, we got the entry times down to 15 to 20 minutes. And then by week 3, we're down to the entry time for the high school is about 10 minutes, and the entry time for the middle school is about 20 minutes. And the reason that's longer is because they start earlier. They have the ability to have a spot for the students to go. So Mr. Lum has made it available so that they could start early. We're doing this right now with, we call it 3 lanes. So we have three lanes of entry for the school. Sometimes in the middle school, we only have 2, depending on the staffing. And then we'll go over some of the staffing requirements in one of the next slides. So after we went through that, we met as a district safety team. We went over what all of our findings, and in December, in preparation for this, we wanted to meet as a safety team. We wanted to go over it, and then at the end of it, the safety team came up with a recommendation to move forward with the weapons detection system at all the secondary schools. Part of that also, and some of it was from a little bit of the panic button we pushed, but we also had an opportunity from one of the competitors of the company that we're using to use, and that was called Evolve. We had an opportunity to test the Evolve next to the equipment that we're using and do a side-by-side comparison. And the district-wide safety team was in favor of that, so that we went and did that a couple weeks later, and we were able to do a side-by-side comparison. The Evolve, similar technology. There are some differences. One of it is it has the ability of the equipment itself to take video and store the video. So, and it also has, I won't call it pinpoint accuracy, but it pinpoints an area where detection is. So if it detects something in a book bag, it's going to put a square around the book bag, and it takes a photograph of that. One of the nice features of that is in the secondary searches or secondary screenings that we did, it allowed us to speed up that secondary screening because we had a better idea of where we needed to search. So overall, we came up with, we went through it, and overall, the staff and the students, they had a feeling of increased safety. We had staff members come up to us and ask, and they told us that their associates from other schools have asked them when they're going to get it. So it was a good reassuring factor of us. The students were upset at times when it was in the beginning, when it was slow. But after all, we got the feedback from the students saying that, they understood what we were doing and why. And by the time we got the program down, we had it down to 10 minutes, which is what it was taking to get in with the pouches and everything everywhere. We've had no weapons that were detected while we used the system in the primary or the secondary screenings. The screenings are accomplished with a minimal impact to the entry time of the schools. It does bleed over a little bit into the middle school time, but when we have 3 lanes fully staffed, we're able to get the middle school in on time. And then the staffing for 3 lanes is about 10 to 12 staff members. We can do it with a minimum of 10, but 12 is kind of our comfort zone. And those are all staff members that are working. Some of them are, we've asked for an additional duty, so they come in early to help out. Some of it we've accomplished by changing some hours. We already covered that one. Any questions on the weapons detection system?
Mr. Maloney?
The difference between the two systems, the one that was evolved, as you said, and
Yes.
it did detect a few things in the backpacks that may not have been a weapon, but may have been some other substance or some other things. Is there a reason why we didn't go with the evolved system? Is that the only reason, or was it cheaper? Was it comparative pricing? or-
The pricing was a factor to begin with, or not to begin with, but it was a factor that was considered. But it was also the available technology at the time. So at times, some of the technology or some of the equipment is available quicker than others. But one of the big keys was portability. So part of the idea behind it was we'd be able to take the equipment and we could take it out to the stadiums and use it at the stadiums so that we don't have any kind of incident out at the stadiums, or we could move it over, by the high school basketball entrance or whatever the event may be. So it gave us more flexibility on where we could use the equipment.
Do you have a follow-up?
I have another question, yeah, but that's okay. That's
All right, Ms. Farmer, I'll come back to you.
So, no weapons were detected. I'm assuming that we see this as a deterrent, which is why we want to expand it to other buildings. My question is, how much does that, and will that cost?
So we haven't got the final numbers yet. We have, it's relatively new as far as us finishing up the pilot and going ahead. You can see we met in December. And then the company's got new quotes for the year. So we're expecting to get those quotes in, within a few weeks.
And we will be apprised of that?
Yes. Mr. Maloney?
How long is the agreement with each company? I know technology evolves each year, and it gets crazy after a while, but I'm sure they want a long-term or a term contract.
So the current, the equipment that we have, that we're using at Arcadia now is equipment that we purchased. And once that equipment becomes obsolete, it's obsolete. It's gone. The Evolve equipment is a contract. I believe it's either 3 or 4 years. And if there's new technology, they'll replace it with the new technology. There was a bunch of us who were involved in the beginning phases of implementing it. And the open gate that we went with, it was I'll call it a bit awkward. They came out to train us. They spent a couple hours with us, and we were on our own. So the first week was, we had to learn the whole process, on our own. And when Evolve came out and did the side-by-side comparison, they sent, depending on the day, they sent either 4 or 5 people that spent every day with us. So they were with us for 4 days. And, they're pledged to us is if we end up going with Evolve, that each school we roll it out to, they'll spend, that amount of time with that amount of people, so.
Vice President Moore?
While you were at Arcadia, did you just do it for the opening of school? Did you do it for any events?
No, so we haven't done it for any events, but we do it all day long. So it's done for the entry, for arrival in the morning, and then the equipment is at the high school and the middle school at the entry door, and the students and any visitors that come to school are constantly screened all day long.
And, well, in the future, as we're moving ahead, just for the high school buildings, high school, middle school buildings?
that's the plan right
Right.
now. I don't know if there's future plans to go to elementary level or not, but
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Haywick?
Good evening. What is the, what's the manpower gonna look like? If you're proposing tonight, making a recommendation that it be rolled out to all the secondary schools, how much staffing is it going to take to be able to man these systems at each school? And are we looking at the same types of delays, or do we feel like we've already, gone through that piece, so won't be the same, or you think it'll be the same pattern until at the other schools? I'm just wondering, delays in staffing.
so delay-wise, I think we learned from the original process. We've definitely fine-tuned some of what we need to do, and we learned, the communication piece is definitely the big piece, not just communicating with staff, but communicating with families, getting kids prepared for what they're going to see when they get to school, and being prepared when they, get into line. Staffing-wise, that 10 to 12 number, just because of the designs of the school and the layout of the equipment, each school will be very similar. There should be about 3 lanes in each school, and that's going to be that 10 to 12 number. And it's not, we don't need an additional 10 to 12 people for each school. We're talking about, a middle school or high school entry. We're talking about 10 to 15 minutes to get that whole school into it, so the whole high school or the whole middle school. So it's that 10 to 12 people that are assigned to that specific task. So it's not, we don't need them for the whole day.
Ms. Flores?
I have a question in regards to what are we looking for as these students are coming through the use weapon detection systems? It's my understanding there's sensitivity settings on them, and I base some of my questions on the feedback of my lovely children who attend Arcadia Middle and Arcadia High School, and their perception of how the system works and what they think is being caught and what isn't being caught. So I lead my questions back to, we have, and you indicate there's been no weapons detected at this point. Prior to that, and I don't know, I know that you're coming on this year and Steve was here before, and maybe the question would be based on the other high schools currently, are we detecting weapons in incidences that we expect if we put the system into these other schools, these weapons will be caught?
Don't answer that.
Okay.
I think we're gonna have to go into executive session to discuss that, because I think it's a matter that can imperil public safety, in my opinion, by specifying exactly what we're looking for and what it'll detect and won't detect.
That's fair.
So I think it's a matter for executive session, or
That's fair.
if you're okay with Mr. Henderson responding to us in an email, but I don't think that's a comment. It imperils public safety, in my opinion.
My apologies, and that's fair, and an email would be fine.
Okay.
That's not a problem.
I would like a discussion if we could, because I think what you're saying is valid, what you're saying is valid, what he's saying is valid, and I need a broader understanding.
All right. I'll make a motion to go into executive session to discuss a matter that imperils public safety. It's going to be narrow in executive session. It's just going to be the matters that imperil public safety. The further discussion will have to come back out here. Does anybody have any other questions that they'd like to ask now before we go in? Because they're not all going to meet the public safety standard. So if we want to do that, we'll delay executive session. If, I know Mr. Butler has a question, I think Ms. Farah has a question, Mr. Maloney, so we'll run through a few more questions, and then if we want to focus in and narrow in on specificity, we'll do that in executive session. Mr. Butler.
Thanks. Thanks for your presentation here tonight. I appreciate it. You mentioned at one point that there'd been reports of a greater feeling of safety among students and staff. I'm guessing that's anecdotal reports, that there hasn't been time to do any kind of a survey or anything like that to get a more quantitative assessment of how people feel about it.
Correct.
And just a little bit of context for my question. We're doing so much work in the district around creating this culture. And you said, we don't want it to feel like you're going into a secure facility or something like that. And so I'm just curious as to how much of that we think is something that we can manage by the way that we do it and the demeanor that we have when people are coming through the systems and those sorts of things, because I hate, it's what you experience first, any place you go sets the tone for the rest of your experience there. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, so part of what we did in our process of refining what we were doing is we also decided that in some of the positions that we were using, there was right people and wrong people. So there was right people that deliver a message in a right way to deliver the message, and there was the wrong way. So we had switched some people around in the roles that they played so that it made the process and the environment more friendly while still accomplishing our goals. So, did that answer it?
Yeah, I think it's a big question.
It is.
I just think it's something that we need to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
What it does to the culture of the field.
Well, one of the questions we talked about when we were meeting as a district-wide team is, we discussed it. It's like we use these detection systems at Red Wings games. We use them at hockey games. We use them at football games, and we don't use them in our schools. And as we discussed that, we're like, that's an issue. You know what I mean? So here we are protecting everybody, doing all these other events, and we don't protect our most precious thing, and that's our kids. So, you're welcome.
Mr. Maloney?
Now, again, you said you evaluated both systems, and the one that we've chosen, I suppose, is that we bought it. Is that true? So the other systems that we are getting, we're going to have to buy? Is it a lease? Is there a warranty with these things?
So
I know
there's a warranty with either one. The one that we buy, there is support, but there's also, like the ones we bought, if we decided that we were going with Evolve, we still have the open gate equipment, and we can use the open gate equipment at any or all the stadiums. So it's not like it's going to go in a closet somewhere and go to waste. We'll use it somewhere, and we'll use that in another spot, so.
Well, thank you very much. I guess
Yep.
that was my question, is are we going to be able to use this in other places if we decide
Yep.
down the road that we want to change our minds? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
As a point of clarification, the one system is basically hardwired, so it's not going to be mobile. The other system is much more mobile, where we can move it around. So that's the biggest, I would say, the biggest difference, between the two systems in regards to the hardwiring versus the mobility. So that's going to limit, in the one system, your mobility with the system. Ms. Farah?
Actually, I think you answered my question. I just wanted to make sure we were not going with the Evolve, and we were really going with the weapons detection system, Open Gate. Just want to make sure we didn't have any contracts, because with the secondary detections that we're looking for, I know that there was extra involvement with Evolve, there also was weapons detections and also elevated temperature detection. So does this system in Open Gate, obviously that's not hardwired, so that doesn't have anything that you can have in there, correct? We can't go with, because I actually looked up Evolve, and it does have an actual secondary, I don't know if that's actually part of this particular, so maybe that can be also asked, but they do have an elevated temperature setting in some of these Evolve programs. I just want to make sure that with Open Gate, we're not getting into these kinds of things that we're not aware of.
So I'm not sure what you're looking at, and I don't know if that's with the weapons detection system that they're detecting elevated temperatures, because they have other applications for part of their process.
Okay.
So I would have to look at it more. So I don't know if you're talking about if somebody has a fever, that elevated temperature, that's not part of the system that we're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Farmer?
So it sounds like so far, there's a lot of things that we still need to find out before we can decide how we move forward. From my point of view, lots of unanswered questions. We don't know how much it's going to cost at this point. We don't know especially what it can detect. And my question, and it might be for the other system, is you talked about video. How long is that video stored for, and who gets to view that video?
So it's, it's stored within the system. We can pull it out of the system, and it's similar to our video system for the whole school district where it rewrites itself, writes over itself. So we can, if we need it for, let's say we did detect a weapon and we need it for a long-term hearing, we can go ahead and pull that video out for the hearing.
Is there a requirement that you can only hold video for so long?
That you can only hold it for so long? I don't know what the requirement is, but it all has to do with how much storage capacity we have, and as we get more storage, the writing over is quicker and quicker, so I don't think there's an exact time frame.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Bongorio?
Mr. McCabe, may I ask, can you give us some clarity on the nature of the resolution, or maybe the wording of the resolution that we're going to address?
The resolution is basically going to be that the Board of Education approves the implementation of a weapons detection system at our secondary schools is going to be the gist of it, based on the recommendation of the Safety Committee.
Okay. So I'll just add as a comment then, as we're going to go into executive session to have further discussion, I'll echo Mrs. Farmer's
It's going to be
comments.
clarifying questions. I just want to make sure the public's aware. Discussion's going to happen out here. If you have a clarifying question in relation to what the weapons detection systems detect, how they detect, anything that can, the public knowledge of would imperil public safety will be discussed in exec session. The rationale and other topics will be discussed in public. It's going to be specific questions around the systems and what they detect, et cetera.
Okay. I guess I'm just expressing the thought that there is a lot of information that would be helpful to have before making a decision. I don't know if, at some point, we'll probably need that executive session. I don't know if it's today, but just my thought there.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, we're going to do, so I can get other people out of here so I don't have to stay, we're going to go into exec session before we do the resolution. Thanks, John. So moving on to 5.01, quarterly reporting of professional services contracts greater than 50,000. This requires written attention. Can I so move it to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Maloney, second by Ms. Flores. Any comments, questions, or concerns? I just have one question. The clinical associates at the Finger Lakes, the $144,000, do we know what that encompasses by chance? It's for special ed. You can get back to me on it? Yeah, that's fine. I was just curious I mean, it's a substantial amount of money for 5 students, so I was just curious. I'm assuming maybe mental health or, I don't know, some type of placement maybe, I don't know. So if you could get back to that with that. All those in favor? That passes 9-0. Moving on to 6.01, quarterly reporting of professional service contracts between 20,000 and 50,000. That's written information only. Does anybody have any questions? All right, coming back into donations. Can I so move the donations to the table or the consent agenda to the table, please? Moved by Mr. Butler, seconded by Ms. Flores. Any comments, questions, or concerns on that? I would just like to thank the Extra Classroom Fund at Athena for paying for the DJ for the winter dance, and I would like to thank Joe Prestigiacomo for his new teacher induction sponsorship. It was greatly appreciated. With that, all those in favor? That passes 9-0. Moving on to student trip approval. Can I so move that to the table, please? Moved by Ms. Flores, seconded by Ms. Millar. Any comments, questions, or concerns on that? I just have 2 questions. Why no fundraising? I don't know who could answer this. Mike?
So the trip's going to be funded in our Title IV.
Okay.
Similar to other activities that meet the criteria for that, so we didn't need to do fundraising.
And my follow-up question today is, how are the students selected?
There's an application process. They need to complete an application. They need to have a sponsor, faculty member, that writes them a letter of recommendation, and they submit that.
Awesome, thank you. Anything else? All those in favor? That passes 9-0. All right, I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss a matter that may imperil public safety. Moved by Ms. Flores, seconded by Mr. Maloney. All those in favor? That passes 9-0. John, you're gonna come in exec with us. Welcome everyone back from our brief executive session, and we're moving on to item 10.01. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Greece Central School Districts approves the use of weapons detection systems at all Greece secondary schools. Can I have somebody move that to the table, please? Moved by Vice President Malor, seconded by Dr. Trawick. Discussions, comments, concerns before we get into a vote? Ms. Farmer? And I'm going to roll call vote this.
There are too many unknowns at this point for me, or I believe any of us, to vote. It's irresponsible. We don't know how much this is going to cost. There's the opinion that these weapon detection system is a deterrent. We were told back when Steve Chatterton was here that they were using a certain system, and that was the system that we're going to use. But now that technology is outdated, so it almost sounds like we're upping these detection. I feel as a board member who's supposed to be watching over the budget, voting on something where we have I mean, we haven't even been told $10. There's been no monetary mention of any amount. And for me to vote on something like that is irresponsible.
Thank you. Ms. Farah?
I would like to actually make a motion to table this until we actually have more information regarding this. At this point, it's not as if we need to install this tomorrow or anything like that. I think once we get more information, I think that's when we can make.
You made a motion to table. It's non-debatable. We need a second. Second by Mr. Bonagario. All those in favor, do you have a date on the tabling from point of clarification?
I guess that depends on if we get the information. If you can give the board the information that we need as far as price and everything that we've all been concerned about, then I guess you would have the answer.
So will you amend your resolution to table for 1 month?
If we have the information in 30 days, absolutely. But if we don't have that information in 30 days, we
Well,
will.
it's not a either or. It's either you're willing to amend it for a month or you're not. I mean, it was a friendly amendment, but it's not debatable, really. I mean, I just made, if the 30 days, I mean, you just can't leave it tabled forever. That was my point.
Okay.
I mean, do what you want to do.
30 days.
Yep, it does. All right, so on the motion to table, all those in favor of tabling for 30 days? I see 3. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion to table fails, so we're back on the main. Ms. Farmer spoke. Ms. Farrar spoke. Mr. Maloney?
As far as detection systems go, I've been through the detection system. I think it works great. I understand, but I cannot stand by and watch somebody hurt or try to explain to a parent while I have the ability to have some type of detection system regardless of the cost.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney.
I have a comment.
Dr. Trawick?
I agree with Mr. Maloney. I just had an employee leave work last week because her daughter in school, a young man told her daughter that he was going to kill her and her sister, and he showed a knife and a gun while in school. So I too, like Mr. Maloney, cannot on my watch allow one child to be hurt. If we had this much debate about every single dollar that we spend, we need to go into executive session about everything. But when it comes to our children's safety, I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that we do what it takes to protect them. So.
Thank you, Dr. Trawick. Ms. Farmer, you already spoke. I'll get back to you when everybody else has an option to speak. Mr. Bonagario, did you have something?
Yes, I would just say that I can't agree with the idea that we would spend at any cost, because we don't have at any cost. We have legitimate budgets to consider. I think it is being very responsible to have full understanding of what we're voting to approve, rather than to just say, I approve it at whatever it costs.
Thank you. Ms. Flores?
I tend to agree with Mr. Maloney and Dr. Trawick in the idea that this weapons detection system is a deterrent. The other thing that I look back on is every person that I have come into contact with in the school district looks at things and works to spend extremely prudently. They do not waste at any point that they don't have to. They look for all sorts of things for us to be careful about what we spend. I find that I do not believe that the people that would be making the decisions to put in a weapons detection system for our school district and our secondary schools would choose to spend unwisely and unnecessarily. I feel like these people would be the best people to make a determination about what makes sense. I have no background and I have no knowledge of anything about weapons detection systems. I have to rely on the people in the school district who have done their homework and who very, very carefully decide what makes sense to spend and what doesn't. So while I do agree with Mr. Bonagorio and the idea that I don't want to spend frivolously and just throw money out there at anything just to have these things in our schools, I feel like the people who have been tasked to do so will do so very carefully, very prudently, and very in mind with what an expense makes sense versus what does not make sense and what would be wasteful.
Thank you, Ms. Flores. Anybody else? I know, Ms. Farmer, you have a comment. Again, I'm going to make a comment. This came through the safety committee. It was unanimous when we did it in the spring, or last year this time, to do the pilot. It was unanimous again this time to bring this forward to the Board of Education. I've had teachers from across the district ask when their buildings are getting it. I've had principals from across the district ask when their buildings are getting weapons detection systems. Again, it's not foolproof. It's a deterrent at the end of the day. That's all it is. It's hopefully make people to make a decision. As Mr. Henderson so eloquently said in his presentation, everywhere you go in society, you're going through a weapons detection system. It causes you to think about what you have in your person. And if we're making that decision, if somebody wants to do a Columbine, we're not stopping at Columbine. That was well thought out. It was a plan. You're not stopping that. But what it is going to be is I'm mad at Mrs. Flores and I decide, you know, she's my girlfriend and I'm upset with her. I hope you don't mind the analogy. But I'm upset with her because she's dating Mr. Clilly now and she dumped me. It prevents me from walking into the building with a firearm in the morning and causing harm to Mr. Clilly or Mrs. Flores. That's the intent of a weapons detection system. It's to stop that spur-of-the-moment, rash decision that people make in all facets of our life. And again, like Mr. Maloney said, it's a tool, it's something we do, and I'm not going to minimize this, but Mrs. Flores said it very well. We have a $300 million budget that we don't look at where every dollar is spent. We don't analyze where every dollar is spent. When it comes to safety of our staff, our students, and our visitors, I think that this is a prudent expenditure of money. And if we're going to start really diving into line item by line item expenses across the district, there's a lot of places we need to look. If we're really going to dive into it, we don't trust the people we hire in these positions to manage facility operations, the superintendent of schools, the deputy, HR, our instructional component, our director of safety and security. If we're not trusting these people with the decisions they make, then we have a lot more work. All you guys better step up because we have a lot more meetings we're going to have going line item by line item through the budget. I can tell you from my hat that I wear with the county, that's what we do. You go line item by line item and look at every item in the budget and call questions on everything. Why are we increasing this 2%? Why are we adding this position? Why are we getting away with this position? If you want to get into that, that's fine, but plan on probably 2 months of your time that you're going through. I'll divide up the budget among all 9 of us, and you're each going to have a section to go through and have a list of questions. And our typical questions, I mean, I'll do environmental and public works because that's the committee I sat on. There were 400 questions that committee asked the administration in regards to the budget. So if that's what you want to get into, I'm fully fine with that, but I trust the people we have making the decisions in regards to the budget. Mrs. Farmer?
Sure. So this is not about not wanting to protect our children. These kids were inside the building, based on the story that you just told, with a gun and a knife. We just had a budget update saying that it's possible that after a year, we might not have enough money to continue to staff the way we've been staffing. So to ask for a monetary amount, when we often do get monetary amounts, about something like this, where some people believe that what it does do to kids is not make them feel protected, it makes them fearful and scared. So this is not a simple, esoteric decision based on money alone. But if we're looking at a possible shortage to continue doing what we're doing and to ask questions about something that there are so many unknown answers to, that is irresponsible.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Bongorio?
The flaw in the scenario that you presented is that we do have known budget amounts, and we have numbers to work with in those other scenarios that you discussed. I think it's a reasonable request to know what it is, and to make it, safety is always urgent, but it's a reasonable thing to know what that blank check is going to amount to.
Vice President Moore?
I myself can't put a number on the safety of our children. I also trust our system. I trust Romeo and his department. I know they spend wisely, and I'd be willing to cut back on so many things we spend money on to have the safety of our children and staff.
Thank you. Everybody's had an opportunity to speak. Joe, anything else you want to say?
I would say an option, I understand Ms. Miller's comment there, and having a sense of even where the funding might be coming from as a means of paying for it is a reasonable thing. Again, that requires knowing what numbers are, but I do not oppose the idea. I like the idea. I just want to have information around it.
I have a clarifying question. So are we never going to know the numbers? Is that what the goal is? Like, isn't it, from my understanding, what we are voting on tonight is whether or not our public safety department can go forward with moving forward with getting a proposal from the one weapons detection system. They're going to get numbers, right, based on our needs, and then they are going to make a determination based on our budgetary constrictions and concerns with what is a responsible decision for our district. So really, the only part that's being taken out of our hands is being able to say no to this dollar amount or yes to that dollar amount. What we're agreeing to is just to move forward. And with that, we are, even though we won't know the numbers, we are trusting our team that we hired, and we pay lots of money to do their job. I'm just asking. I want to be clear on that, because it sounds like what we're saying is, oh, we're just going to approve this and you spend whatever. We're not giving them a blank check. They have a job to do.
100%.
And they are accountable to us. So because we're passing the torch and saying we trust you with this decision means that they're going to do the right thing by us, right, as the board? Correct. And if not, we have whatever action we could take. Just want to be clear, because it really sounds bad, like, oh, here's a blank check. And I don't have time to do blank checks, okay? I'm here at night away from my children that I want to keep safe like everybody else. So I just wanted to be clear about that. Thanks.
Yep, thank you, Dr. Choke. All right, with that, we're going to move into the voting. I'm going to, like I said, we're going to do a roll call vote on this. I'm going to start with Vice President Millar.
Would you repeat?
The resolution is, be it resolved, the Board of Education of Greece Central School District approves the use of weapons detection systems at all Greece secondary schools.
I approve.
Mr. Butler,
I approve.
Mr. Maloney,
I approve.
Ms. Farah.
I approve with hesitation.
It's a yes or a no vote. I mean, you can make a comment why you're voting with hesitation, but it's a yes or no vote. There's no hesitation. It's either yes or no, and you can explain your vote.
I did. I said I approve it with hesitation.
Okay.
No.
Dr. Shaywick,
Yes.
Mr. Bonagario,
Without responsibly providing a budget for what we're getting into, I cannot approve this, no.
Ms. Flores,
I approve.
I'm going to vote yes, and I'm going to explain my vote. I've said what I've said multiple times in regards to this. I think when it comes to safety and security in our schools, you have to use every resource you have. We use every resource on our table for a host of things across the school districts. And I think what you have to do is you have to look at what we're doing and why we're doing it. And at the end of the day, I think it's a good expenditure of money. I think it's best for our students. I think it's best for our staff. And I think it's a responsible decision of this Board of Education to support this. So I voted yes. The motion carries 7-2 to purchase weapons detection systems. And with that, I need a motion to adjourn. Mr. Maloney.
I'd like to make that motion to adjourn this meeting, please.
Ms. Flores, you got the second? All those in favor? That passes 9-0. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.